Hey, you've tuned into another math lesson with Mr. C, 5.5 equivalent fractions. Once you have your name and your date, please unpause the video in 3, 2, 1. At this time, you're checking your homework. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, zooming in. Equivalent fractions. How can you find equivalent fractions? Fractions that have different numerators and denominators, which we went over last lesson, but name the same amount, are called equivalent fractions. So let's look right here. We want to see which fractions are equal. How much take up the same amount of space this way? We see 1 2/3, 2/3, take up the same amount of space as 1, 2, 3, 4 sixths. So what they did was they took this whole and they split it into 6 pieces, and they have 4 of them, and that's the same size as if you split it into 3 and you had 2 of them. And today we're going to go over how that works. And also you could split it into ninths, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the same as 2/3 as well. 6 ninths also equal to 8 twelfths. These are the same. And so the question that we're asking today is, how do you find fractions that are equivalent, and how do you find out if fractions are equivalent? Well, one way to find out a fraction that is equivalent is to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same non-zero number. They're multiplying the numerator here and the denominator by 2, a non-zero number, 2. And I see that both the top and the bottom are multiplied, and that kind of sounds very similar to previous lessons where we do the same to both sides. I'm noticing that we have to do the same to both the top and the bottom here so that it will remain equal. 10 times 2 is 20, 15 times 2 is 30. So we're saying 20 thirtieths is equal and is the same as 10 fifteenths. So they are equivalent fractions because you multiplied both sides by the same number. Well, there is another way. You can also divide the numerator and denominator by the same non-zero number. If, this is a big if, we're going to find out about this, if they can both be divided evenly. So we're asking ourselves, what can you divide both 10 and 15 by? Well, since we learned our divisibility rules in earlier lessons, which is why we went over it, I know this ends with 0, I can divide that by 5. This ends in 5, I can divide that by 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and so 2/3 is equal to 10 fifteenths. They're the same. They are equivalent fractions. So let's look at this circled black example just for another teacher example, and I'm asking myself, what can I divide both 9 and 12 by? Well, I know just from my background knowledge I can make a factor tree if I wanted to with the clue word of pretzel, but I already know that I can divide 9 by 3 and 12. So when I divide 9 by 3, I get 3. When I divide 12 by 3, I get 4. And so 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. Moving on. Here are your vocab notes. I didn't print these out. It's very simple. Make sure that you have this underlined as your word with the definition and the picture right below. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. So here are your example 1. We are trying to find equivalent fractions. We're going to have 2 specific rows. If you set up your notes to look just like this example right now, that's very wise. So we have 2/4, and in this column we're going to multiply it by some number, both the top and the bottom, to create a second equivalent fraction. 2/4, I'm just going to pick 3 times 3/3 is 2 times 3 is 6, 4 times 3 is 12. I want you to notice that 2/4 times 3 is not the same as this, what we just did. 3/3 is the same as multiplying something by 1. So that's why when you take 2/4 and you multiply it by 1, you will still get the same number. It just looks different, but it's the same amount of pizza if we had a pizza. And I'm saying that because 2/4 times 3 is actually 6/4. Which is more than 1 whole. If you have half of a pizza or 2 slices out of 4 slices and you multiply that by 3, you end up with more than 1 pizza. But here, if I had a pizza that was in 2/4 and I multiply it by 3/3, I still have the same amount. And I want to show a video what that would look like. Alright, so if we have a whole right here, and you split it into 4 pieces, and you have 2 of them, you have 2/4 right here. And if you multiply 2/4 times 3 for both, you get 6/12. And I want to show you why that works. 6/12 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6/12. And see how they're exactly the same size. They're an equivalent fraction, or equivalent part of one whole. We talked about the meaning of frac and fractions yesterday, and it means part. So they are the same size as one. If you split one pizza into 12 slices and you had 6 of them, it'd be the same as if you split one pizza into 4 slices and you had 2 of them. Alright, so moving on. If I had 2/4 and I want to divide it by the same number to keep it equivalent, what can I divide both 2 and 4 by? Oh, I can divide them both by 2. I know that because they're even. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So therefore, 1/2 is equal to 2/4. Moving on to 24/48. 24/48. Let's multiply that by 2 over 2. 24 times 2, well, I might have to multiply that out. That's 48. And 48 times 2, if I multiplied that out, is 96. So what we're saying is 48/96 is the equivalent to 24/48. So we have 24/48 again. And if I want to divide that by a number, what can I divide both of these by? Well, let's just do 2 because that's easy. We could also divide it by 6, but you know, that's another thing. There's more than one right answer for this. This will be 12, and if I divide 48 by 2, I get 24. So 12/24 is equal to 24/48. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Here's example 2. Please try to solve these, coming up with equivalent fractions. Please try multiplying both by 4, and then see what both of these can divide by. I'm going to show you the answers in 3, 2, 1. Alright, here are your answers. I wanted to talk specifically about down here when you tried to divide 4/9 by a number that would divide both 4 and 9. There is no number other than 1 that can divide both 4 and 9, therefore the simplest that it can be just going lower than 4/9 is just 4/9. It's just going to stay there. You can't divide both of those by the same number. But the rest of the answers are there as well. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Alright, please pick 3 of these to do. Remember, you're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by a number, and also see if you can divide both of them. And the answers are coming in 3, 2, 1. Here are the answers. Just for the bigger ones, then those are kind of options. So for example, 10, you didn't have to have 12/18, so that might be blurry to read. You didn't have to have that. You could have multiplied 6/9 by a bigger number. This one they just multiplied by 2 over 2. But here are some possible answers you could have. After these, you may do your group math game, Khan Academy, or make a math video. And here are your answers for group math game in 3, 2, 1. Here they are, and thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget you're awesome.